Hello, Amadou.
Yeah, Mr. Siri, naka?
Cool. What's good?
Man, chilling, man.
Yeah. Nice. Pierre,
Hey, what's up, guys?
what's good with you, man?
What's going on?
I woke up this morning, so that's good for me.
Thank God, huh?
Exactly.
That's good, man. Go ahead, turn this camera.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Make sure my earpieces are working.
Yeah. Go ahead. So just give them maybe a couple minutes for people to come in. One of them just texted me that they had an issue with the link. So don't know. That was strange. So I don't know if there's an actual issue with the link or what I shared in the group, because I've tested it and it brought me back here. Quite sure. Let's see. Oh, you cannot hear us? Okay. Not a problem.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Can
Okay,
you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. All right. Great. Already started recording.
Oh, you already started?
Yeah, because I set it in the meeting settings.
Yeah.
Just went ahead and just made sure as soon as it started, it was recording. Sometimes there's a little bit of banter in the beginning, so didn't want to miss that. So I was like, this time around, we're going to catch everything. Yeah. Luiz, what's going on?
How's it going, gentlemen?
How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
What you up to?
Just typical Saturday morning errands, man.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so whenever you get in a good place and you can turn on your camera, then I'll spotlight you. That way, your video will be spotlighted.
All right.
Yeah, but whenever, right now we're just giving people a couple minutes. So I think my reminder was probably a bit too early. Hey, Vivek. What's going on, brother?
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
Such a pleasure to be here. I'm doing just fine. How about you?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
How's the UK weather treating you?
It's...
let me guess, you're in Durham.
I know, right?
Durham, UK.
I know, Durham, UK, right? And I'm still in Knots. It's pretty cool weather out here, though, right now. Initially, I thought it would rain, but the rain clouds have gone. It's probably not going to rain. But again, it's very surprising here. Anything can happen at any moment. You can have multiple seasons in a day. So you just got to walk out, wherever you go and just take an umbrella just to be on the safe side. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the academic seasons in my current college course that I'm taking for data science at Denver University Online, right? And it says autumn. I said, what? I've never heard of that one. I mean, I'm used to fall semester and spring semester and summer break, even if that. But it's like, oh, did you sign in for autumn season? I was like, oh my goodness, ain't that old school?
Yeah, it's
remember
so many. I mean, I think the beauty of online learning is
Yeah.
You know, there's no real season. You know, it just depends on a course duration. You know, so if a course is 2 months, they can have you know, lots of 2-month courses and call that something else. So that's probably how you got hit with that.
Autumn. Oh, autumn season. What?
Yeah, I mean, they probably meant fall, but you know, yeah, it's not lots of people use that.
You know,
Lee,
yeah.
what's going on, brother?
Hey guys, how's it going?
All good, all good, all good.
Good.
We out here. Brilliant, brilliant. Got a little. Hey. Let's see. Going on, Aliu? I think we'll probably get started in a few, maybe 3 minutes, and then we get started. I think we have good numbers now, at least. Get going. Yeah. This is a bank holiday today in the UK, so lots of people are out and about doing things. You would not believe it's Corona season. Like in London, day before yesterday, I think, or day before, one of my friends works at O2 Arena, and it was packed for a Burna Boy concert. So yeah, so tell people. Some people are enjoying in Corona season. Yeah. All righty. Let's see. Yeah, maybe we should just go ahead and get started, and then as people trickle in, you know, they can just watch the recording if that sounds like a plan. Right. So, is that okay, Luiz?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Yeah, Pierre, we good with that.
Yeah. We can
All
get
right.
started.
Okay. So, welcome everybody to another edition of Open Tech Convo. And in today's session, we are going to be talking about employee development, which I truly love. You know, so we have some capable guys here to drive the panel, namely Pierre Davis and Luiz Ranz. And today we're going to be focusing on what strategies we can use in tech companies. However, if you're not with a tech company, feel free to ask, even for your industry, because employee development is across the board, whether you're in the public or private sector. It is important to develop employees because everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to get to the next step. So a lot of times there's turnover because employees don't see themselves going anywhere in a company. Because you could be in a company for many years and, you know, still be either at the same level in your career or in the same position, or even on the same salary. So how do you, you know, grow with a company so that you can develop your career and perhaps maybe even one day become an entrepreneur and set up your own thing because you've learned, you know, to develop yourself and develop others through the process. So you'll have a recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and let Pierre do his introduction. We lost Luiz, but when he gets back on, I believe he's probably had a network disconnection. So when Luiz gets back, then we'll go ahead and have him introduce. So Pierre, please introduce yourself. I'm guessing you know the process now. So yeah, so just tell us a bit about yourself, your career, or even any information you want to share. And then we'll have Luiz do the same. And then we'll get started deciphering this topic and then open the floor for Q&A for everybody. Sounds like a plan?
Yeah, that works.
All righty. Luiz, good to see you, man. It's been so many years. Yeah. He hasn't changed much. Yeah. All right. So, floor is yours, Pierre.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Erin. Hi everyone. Pierre Davis here. Based out of San Francisco. Been here since 2007. When I got out of school. Trying to age myself a little bit here, but spent the last, I would say, 15 years. I currently work at Accenture, and Accenture is one of the largest consulting firms in the world, and I would say a good chunk of my career has been spent around service management, which is basically kind of helping organizations think through how they deliver services to end customers, right? And how to continuously improve the efficiency of those services and bringing value to the organization. So I spent a great deal of time helping companies kind of unlock that value, and I spent a great deal of time as well on a lot of digital transformation type efforts. So I kind of run horizontal because of what I do within cloud. So my background is in cloud computing, but I run horizontal. What I mean by that is regardless of function or industry, right? So my clients have spanned banking, fintechs, automotive, healthcare, you name it, right? But over the last couple of years, my focus has been more so around fintech companies. So my portfolio of companies include payments, banking, yeah, mostly fintech companies, payments, banking, insurance, some insurance, but not a whole lot. But it's been great because I think some financial companies, not all, have been the last adopters of cloud, if you ask me. But so when I think of my journey, I think of even within the cloud, the value that you bring to the cloud space, right? Making sure that you kind of think through, where it is that you want to be in your cloud at the end of your cloud journey, and then kind of looking back, well, how do you get there, right? So I spent a great deal of time, working with industry leaders as they begin to shape their cloud journey, as they journey into the cloud, or when they're in the cloud, how do they continue to optimize to get the best value out of the cloud? So that's kind of a little bit of my background. Born and raised in Gambia, of course, and very familiar with some of very familiar with the panelists, of course, and some of the guys in the audience. So excited to be here, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Pierre. Appreciate that. Certainly interesting journey you've had. Yeah, hopefully some of the participants have certain questions for you on that. I don't know, I have some. So let's allow Luiz to share, Luiz, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me? Great. Not sure I can even come close to that awesome resume there. My background is more in a desktop support service delivery environment. Currently work for a city in Texas, Grand Prairie, as the IT support specialist for public safety department. So we handle most of the police, fire, emergency management, all the court services. For me, the journey has been obviously from my college years. I was lucky enough to be in the business kind of early. So graduated in 2004. I was working at a bank, and my resume ended up in some lady's desk. Well, 4 weeks later, she calls me, and I'm working for the city of Memphis at that time. I spent 12 years there. Worked from my way up from the help desk, which is obviously the general entry position with every IT position, right? I think everybody needs to have a pretty decent help desk background in order to be able to function adequately. You can obviously bypass some of these options, but just to get a good understanding from a user standpoint to what you're supporting. I think the help desk option is really, really intricate in this endeavor. Progressed into a lead role, then desktop support, and then system administration. Currently, I support our P25 system. Don't even ask me how that happened. It was one of those, hey, let's get you to do P25. Honestly, my experience with P25 has been pretty awesome. I've been working with Motorola. I think Motorola is one of the most amazing companies as far as technology. Not dealing with the business side, but their technology is pretty top notch compared to a lot of their competitors, and just the amount of response. But my journey started 4 years ago with P25 as far as being able to handle the transmission, radio transmission, and a lot of the backbone for that stuff is IT driven. It's IP based because their infrastructure is obviously sort of like a network just for radios. But aside from the radio stuff, I still do desktop support stuff. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. My main function primarily is radios because I'm the one designated to that. But I do application support, I do desktop support, I do help desk calls, I do everything. Given that we have a smaller team, but it gives you the opportunity to build more of your skill set. All right, because you're more exposed to a whole bunch of other stuff, and then it helps you develop as a person and as well as a professional. Like Sering, I've got pretty much more or less the exact same background. Parents half Gambian, half Spanish. My dad's from Madrid, Spain. I grew up in Gambia and went to school in Gambia. My dad and my mom wanted me to go to the UK and Spain. I was like, I'm not converting everything over to Spanish. So I initially wanted to go to Japan because I was, into martial arts at that time and everything else. And my mom was like, yeah, it's too far. Let's not do that. So luckily for me, I ended up getting a scholarship for Rusk College. It's an HBCU in Holly Springs, Mississippi. If anybody knows anything about Mississippi, I didn't. My first week there, my roommates decided that it was a great idea for me to watch Mississippi Burning. So that was my introduction to Mississippi. So, I mean, obviously it's that state has a lot of history, definitely ties to a lot of African history in return as well. So I got to learn a lot about the South. But since then was stationed in Memphis, Mississippi area, 9 years ago, moved to Texas and been here ever since. My family, I got 2 lovely daughters, one 18-year-old kid who's finally first year in college. Help us. But that's a bit about me. Looking forward to the panelists and the participants' questions. I see a couple of familiar faces on the names. And I think this is pretty awesome. Sering, I can't commend you enough for all this work, man. This is great. Thanks for having me.
Sering, I think you're on mute.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I double clicked it. So one click for mute, unmuted and muted by myself. Very nice. It's excitement. But yeah, thanks a lot, Luiz. Yeah, certainly very interesting journey as well. Even Pierre was commenting, saying, great way to get the 411 on the South.
Listen, if you watch Mississippi Burn and you just got to Mississippi, that's all you need to know about what's going on in the South.
That's all you need to know. I'm telling you, all you need to know.
It opened your eyes to a lot of things. That's for sure.
It does. That was definitely an introduction there. And the added fact that it was an HBCU school, and you get the general experience of learning, obviously with any university, but I think it's a bit more enhanced, more for us, for people of color, when we go to an HBCU, where we see more of how it directly correlates to our environment and our society and our our people, and I think that definitely is an added advantage for you as a person. Maybe eventually will catch up as far as career wise, but I think as of right now, I mean the vice president is an HBCU college grad, so that definitely is taking up some steam, and a lot of good things are coming from HBCUs as well. I think a lot of them in the past have been underfunded, but I think that's looking to change as well. But definitely a good experience. I mean, not knocking any of the other universities. Obviously, Princeton, Harvard, and all these guys would always be the elite, but they
No,
sit
Luiz,
down
we
and
can.
write on the same pieces of paper, that we do. So I mean, it's no different.
Hey, it's okay, Luiz. I mean, I went to HBCU. I mean, I think
There
myself
you
and
go.
we went to
Yeah,
school together, and I think just because you go to a small school or a small college or an HBCU doesn't mean you can't compete. So
absolutely. That is
I,
exactly my point.
I feel proud about it. I wouldn't change a thing.
Hey,
Absolutely.
I also went to an HBCU. So
There you go. So there you go.
Nice,
There you go.
nice.
yeah, so we're not even talking about that. But Vivek just commented, soldier development is an ongoing, continuous process, and it draws parallel with employee development in the corporate world. So anyway, I guess that's kind of a hint maybe. Let's we'll jump in. Right. So thank you, Vivek. Great comment. Of course, employee development is a continuous process. Certainly, the recipe that you use is not fixed. Okay, so it evolves with the situation, with the times, with the company as well. So I will probably touch on that during the talk. So feel free to share. It would be good to have a context from the military standpoint as well. We'll go ahead and jump on with the first question. I'll go ahead and ask the first question, and then I'll open the floor for other folks. But it's going to be Pierre's type of question. So Pierre, what does employee development mean to you? And can you tell us a bit from when you see the question in the title, which is what strategies can be leveraged? What comes to mind? And the same question goes to Luiz as well. So we'll have Pierre first, and then we'll take Luiz's answer. And then after that, we'll open the floor.
Well, before no, thanks, Derek, for the question. Before I answer that question, I'm actually going to post a question in the chat. I want to get the audience's thought on this, and maybe you can help me with the answers as they come in.
Sure.
Right? So I'm going to post a question. I'm going to post. What's that?
Be my pleasure.
All right, I just posted a question in the chat, so I want to get the reaction from the crowd just to kind of get everybody going.
Okay.
And then I'll give my perspective. And you could just put your answer in the chat, and then Saren, you can we can figure out what to do.
I commented, but not on the question. I think. Let's see. It says. I guess he's talking to Luiz, saying, I'm with the Army Futures Command Software Factory in Austin. Small world. We partner with VMware software development, and they are like our SMEs. Okay, so Pierre, we got two answers. We got one from Luiz saying both. We got one from Mohammed Ali Ubari. It says both. And we got answers coming up.
Good.
So far, both is winning.
Both is winning. All right.
Vivek said mid-level career manager.
Okay, interesting.
Is usually responsible for training small teams. Okay, it's an interesting perspective.
No, this is good. This is good. I'm just curious, and the reason why I'm asking this is because I want to just kind of see from people's perspectives what they have either encountered or what they've seen, within their respective. Definitely not the CEO. yeah, I just want to kind of see like, what people have experienced and, what their viewpoints are on that.
Amadou said the employee.
Okay. All right. We'll maybe get another response or two, and then I'll.
Sorry, I was sorry for butting in. It's actually Pierre's former neighbor, Badu Senghor. Boy, I'm just so happy to see your face, Mr. Davis. I was trying to type into the chat, but I couldn't. So I wanted to say the company, Asirim. So I decided to butt in the company. But good to see you, Mr. Davis, boy, and Luiz, my senior
Absolutely.
too.
Badu Senghor, I 100% remember you. 100%. We were neighbors. Yes, for sure.
And Ali, feel free. You can always use your mics. Everybody's mic is enabled, cameras and everything. So feel free. If it gets too much, we'll just have people raise their hands. But you can always butt in, and share. We love it. Let's get it engaging. Amadou's, yeah, okay. So I guess, yeah.
So I guess we've had cheers, Dr. So okay, so I think we had some good responses, and they're not wrong, right? But here's kind of how I look at it, right? Because it can be viewed from two lenses. So employee development is the responsibility of the employee, right? The company that you work for, or your manager that you work for within your company, their responsibility is making sure that you are able to enact on your journey. But you are ultimately responsible for your development. And people may think, well, how is that possible? Because, I work for a company, they should have all these things available and all that to me for me to grow my career and all that. Great. But they're an enabler, right? No one comes to you and says, hey, we think you should be CEO today, right? Not to say it can't happen, or we think you should play this role. It can happen. But at the end of the day, companies would lean more towards what I would call the top achievers to be able to say, okay, this person has the potential, or I see this person in another role or two because they've demonstrated X or Y or Z, right? So I kind of look at it from that lens in the sense that the employee is responsible, and the manager or whoever their manager is, the person they report to or the company, their role is to be able to enable them reach the end of that journey, so to speak, right? But why I think is important, right? I mean, this is crucial, right? If you think of the impact that it has on employee engagement, right? When you join a company and you get involved in various things and you're looking to grow your career, right? When I think of talent retention, right? And the value proposition that the employee brings and the benefits to the organization, because if done properly, this is a two-way street. The company benefits from your talents, and then you also get to advance your career, right? So oftentimes, people that are, in this journey, they think of it like, well, how do I navigate this whole process, right? So I think it's the responsibility of the employee to be able to get to do that, but then have the right guidance from the company or whoever they report to make sure that happens. So I'll pause for a second and.
Okay. Right. So, Luis, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, obviously, a lot of what Mr. Davis mentioned here was obviously right spot on. It is the employee primarily responsible for his growth. Obviously, the companies will provide you the environment. Some will. That will provide you the environment for you to be able to be successful. They will give you the tools. They will give you the path and everything. But it's you that has to make that walk, right? The main goal, from my perspective, and it's been my experience, that you primarily need a goal. You need to know what you're aiming for. You can't just go into this blindly. Hey, I want to do IT. A lot of people say, hey, I want to do IT. Well, what part of IT do you want to do? You want to do desktop support. You want to do software support. You want to do programming. You want to do networking. It's a lot of branches. It's a very, very vast, large spectrum of endeavors that you can get into. So the more certain you are about the direction that you want to go in, the easier it is for you to have a plan, goal of action for you to execute. Like everything, it's all planning. Like you don't just build a house and just put the roof on, right? You have to get the foundation going, then you get the walls going, and then you get all the other things going on before you even get to the roof part. So it's a methodical step of what it is that you want to achieve. Obviously, basic ground knowledge, always a plus. There's not enough that you can learn about certain things, especially if you learn on your own. But if they're giving you the opportunity to go to a class or go to a cert or go get some exposure or get involved with certain projects, that all is learning experience that you can add to your belt in the long run. Because then at the end of the day, all these things you will be able to present as part of your resume repertoire to, if you're getting hired somewhere else or getting considered for another position. So all of these help the person develop. But the main point is the person having the objective in clear mind of what it is that they want to achieve and a goal to set that, to achieve that.
Thank you, Luiz. Thank you, Pierre. Does anyone in the participant list have anything to add? I'll open the floor.
Yeah, I was going to say Davis and Luiz. By accident, I called you Lounge. Man, you guys are making some heavy hitter points. I mean, like you could not have said it better, right? Like Luiz, you were just mentioning about certifications and stuff like that. I mean, it's not about the certification, right? But it's about getting the knowledge in the knowledge space. And yeah, spot on. I actually put a link in the chat. Feel free to look at it whenever we get a chance. But it's exact same thing in the Army, right? Or in the DoD, or in the military framework. We have three different. It's a pillar of development platforms, right? So we have institutional development. I mean, not to be rhetoric or something. We got operational, training and development, and we got self-development, which is what Amadou was just referring to. And super quick, I'll just give a quick example, right? Let's say within the military, all right, institutional development is like, hey, you're joining the military, go through all the training platforms, the basic stuff, right? And that's not the end all be all. That's just one part of it. Self-development is exactly what Luiz and Davis, you guys were mentioning about, taking these classes. They give you the tools and the pathway, and you try to go and learn on your own, right? Different things. And what's the other one? Operational development is essentially on the job, your day-to-day operations, and also getting mentored by your, team and team members and your seniors and peers, juniors alike. You can learn from anybody, right? So that's your day-to-day operations. Take it in the civilian world. I can't really draw too many parallels. Maybe you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'll say something like, let's say a guy's joining Verizon, corporate Verizon, right? He's coming in, his onboarding process, whatever he learns in his onboarding process will be your institutional development, right? That's like, hey, come on in, play by the rules. This is what you need to know to come in, right? And then self-development is all the tools and pathways, like you guys were saying, that, hey, learn this, it'll be good for you when you do your job, so on and so forth. And then operational, day-to-day, like every day when he's helping customers or whatever the case may be, right? Well, and learning from his team members up or down the ladder, it doesn't matter. The food chain is big, and it's a chain. So yeah, that's my drawing parallels, not only from the military, but I can also see how it applies in the corporate world.
Yeah, no, that's really good perspective, and I think you and Luiz touched on it, right? Some of those strategies, right? So going back to the topic, the strategies that you can leverage, and again, this is not just for tech companies. This is for anybody, right? I think you guys touched on it, which is finding the right coaching and the right mentoring, right? So getting the right coach, someone more experienced, who has more, a diverse set of skills, right? Where they can provide the right advice and guidance to help you gain new skills, improve your performance and enhance the quality of your career. You can get a mentor where you can be matched with, unless if you're seasoned in your career, you can get matched with someone who has less experience, right? And then be able to, whether through formal or informal programs, right, depending on your company, you can have that kind of setup, right? That's an avenue, right? Because what that does is when you have someone that you can kind of look up to, or someone that you can kind of have help you lead and guide the way, it helps reduce turnover. It helps enhance recruitment as well. Because if I join a company and I have someone that I look up to, or someone that I feel like has added value to my life, it's almost imperative when someone else wants to come into the company, they'll see that path and say, well, oh wow, okay, Pierre is here, Luiz is here, Sering is here. Okay, this looks like a company that I could see myself working on, right? And then it also improves, performance within the work environment, especially for people of color. Like we need that, that coaching and mentoring. I think another strategy could be, having some type of development plan as well, depending on the needs, right? Basically these are detailed, right? In terms of the employee's intention, like what are they trying to, what's the outcome? What are they trying to learn as they go through their journey? And how tangible can those things be? So I think those are things that, when you join a company, you need to begin to think about, right? And that's why I said employee development, to me, it's the responsibility of the employee. The company they have tools to aid you to get there, right? And you have to have a plan. Because if not, like Sering was saying earlier, you'll sit in your role for 13, 14 years, and maybe you won't have gathered, learned a lot of skill. So it's very important. Another thing that comes to mind in terms of strategy could be like cross-training, right? Cross-training employees, right? So that, you could have a particular function right now, but you can also perform duties, of another function, or take on a role that somebody else is doing, right? That you otherwise would not have been assigned to. And this can be short-term or long-term, depending on what's going on. But I think when you cross-train, you begin to see different, right? You don't just learn the skill of the other function or the other person, but you begin to see how what you do impacts other people, or what they do impacts you. You begin to see the full picture, right? So, those are the three that come to mind. Of course, there are others. I mean, you could do a stretch assignment, right? And this is where, I think people miss out a lot on, because sometimes we work in our roles, and we only want to do what we're comfortable doing. We're not ready to stretch and do something different and difficult, because we don't want to get exposed. We don't want to look like failures, right? Because everybody wants to show up the best, right? But I tell you what, from my experience, I've failed a lot. I can't remember how many times, but I failed a lot. So I think being vulnerable and being open to failure is what can quickly get you to success, if you ask me, within the career journey, at least, as we're speaking. So I think having that stretch assignment, is a good thing to help within the development process. You can also job shadow, again, like I said, not just looking over someone's shoulder and saying, oh yeah, wow, okay, I see this is how you code Python, okay, fine. But it's more so, okay, you're in this development world and you're writing a script for an application to perform a certain way, or you're deploying a new feature. Okay, what is that doing for me? And let's say I sit in marketing, right? So the way you deploy your code, or the way you deploy your piece of software, right, and you push that to production, I need to be aware of some of those things, because that's the feature or functionality that I, as in marketing, would have to begin to, advertise or campaign on, to say, hey, customers, we have this new feature, and so on and so forth. So you see the connection between the two. So when you job shadow, you're not only learning a new skill or looking and seeing what someone else is doing, but you're actually also understanding what it is that someone else is doing and how that impacts you. So just wanted to throw out a few, ideas in terms of strategies on, you know, what we can do within this career journey. But again, this is just from the looking at it from the lens of the you know, the employee. And then I think it's also important, you know, we'll touch on that later on, but if you're a manager or you manage people, you know, what do you need to do? Because you have, this is where the role of the company or the manager within the company plays a vital piece, right? Because you have to then know what to do, because everybody that's a manager is not a good manager. You know, I mean, I can attest to this because I've had a lot of them. Just because they say they are managers, that doesn't mean they know how to manage people. And it's your responsibility as a people manager, because that's the people manager, to know how to help your person who's reporting into you navigate, right, their journey. It is your responsibility if they report to you. So I'll stop talking and give others to give some perspective.
If it's okay, Sering, I'd like to give a perspective as well.
Sure.
But I would
Please.
like to focus on the company and the importance that the company plays as well, and for a number of reasons. Firstly, I think that a lot of, at least in my experience, and this I'll take it, maybe the best one I'll use here was when I was working at Standard Chartered Bank. It's a bank really, it felt like a school, right? Because they're always kind of curating your learning, if I could say, right? Putting you in a process where continued career development is just part of your daily to-do, right? And when I was looking at it, I look at it two reasons. Firstly, I think it's very important from a level of the company. If you are paying people salary, you want to make sure that they're doing the job for you, right? So, and you always want to view on the staff that you have. And sometimes having that, maybe if I could say curated career development path, it really helps you want to identify the high performing staff so you can really set out their journey. Because if I have I want to keep them with me. I don't want them to go anywhere else. That's why I know the reason behind all these management training programs, really identifying the leaders of the future. That is on one part. The second part is, if you do not have good performing staff, you want to have a pathway towards, I mean, it may seem hard, towards exiting them effectively, right? So the only way sometimes I feel you can do that is really having a very regimented, to a point sometimes, way of putting through your staff. And this includes like training, continuous training, you know, having potentially a career path mapped out for people's potential growth within your company. And I think this is something that is very, very important, that especially when you're really starting to grow a company, you know, especially if you look at multinationals, how they build out, you know, sometimes it's very hard to be able to do that if you do not have these structures built into place. And I find that it's always, as a young company, it's good to copy some of these things, even though some of them are not necessarily necessary, but it's good to try to build in these systems so that you can always, because you'll be always making mistakes, because HR is one of the biggest, I think one of the most important decisions in any company. And this is where a lot of companies, I feel, get it wrong, is just getting the right people and letting the good people go and not motivating them enough. So you really need to have a scheme of continually and very iterative process of always being able to find your people, knowing where their strengths lie, building them up towards there, and then the people who don't necessarily fit into that, having a way of being able to identify them and kind of exiting them out of the company in a way. So in that sense, I feel that the company also, for its own good, really has a strong role to play in career development.
Thank you, Aliu. You started answering my second question, which was about the learning organization, right? So, you know, when we're talking about employee development, in my opinion, is a two-way street. So the company has a role to play and the employee has a role to play. Sometimes in Gambia, from few companies that I've seen or few places, you know, you find that some organizations really don't have any learning or development programs, you know, for their staff. Everything the staff does is on their own. They go and pay for courses, they go and take classes, they go and try to develop themselves, you know, so they're proactive, but the company is not a learning organization. So the company doesn't have any framework for what it's looking for, or for employees to see what type of paths exist for them, right? Because not everyone knows where they go. Sometimes you mute yourself. Mute him. Sorry. Please mute your mics if you're in a busy place or if you're not speaking. Yeah, so sorry about that. So yes, if there has to be some type of framework, like I said, not everyone knows where they're going. There's a lot of people that go into the work industry, and you know they're sometimes navigating in the dark because they're just happy to have a job. Sometimes it's not even what they did in school. They just have a job that maybe they got by accident, and they think they can do it, and they start loving the job, and they research on things that they can do. So it's always nice if the company has different frameworks that can guide. For example, if they're looking for leadership, what's their leadership framework? Do they have any programs or pathways that a leader can follow, whether it's for training, whether it's for coaching, whether it's projects that they can do to set them up to be a suitable leader for the company? You know, the same with, you know, whether it's technical as well. If you want to be a technical person and you maybe you want to be a CFO or even a CTO, you know, what are some of the things that you need, the qualifications you need, you know, the competencies that you need for your job, the types of projects that will help boost your resume, or even the connections, the network, or even some of the on the job, as Vivek mentioned earlier, because some companies, as a learning organization, they promote learning. So they'll tell you, look, this company is learning and growing. You also need to be a lifelong learner, just like the company, so we can all learn together, because nobody has all the perfect formula. So I think partly, for me anyway, it's a two-way. It always helps if you're in an environment where you can see where you're going, or even have a hint of what's available to you. It makes it easier for you to just go ahead and plan out, even if you did not know what you wanted to do. But just by seeing where the path some people have taken, you might be more motivated to see that it's accessible to you. You can reach it. So so that's why I was going to ask this next question. But then when Aliu started mentioning the stuff about, you know, the company's responsibility, of course, it makes a big difference what the companies have. I mean, there are some companies that even leverage development in terms of, you know, to help them guide and review performance in their performance appraisals. So they'll say, everyone, look, you need, after we've done your performance appraisal, if there are any gaps, if there are any things that you are not good at during this past year, okay, here are some remedial things that you can do. Whether it's a training you have to do to be, you know, maybe to meet compliance, because a lot of companies, all their main training is just compliance. They just need to show that their employees are compliant to certain things so they can get their licenses to continue operating. But there are other companies that have other things instead of just compliance. They also have different types of trainings, whether it's you know, technical or soft. I've seen big corporations actually give free trainings to their you know, employees for at least two technical trainings per year, and then one soft, or sometimes even 2-on-2, or based on budget. As long as there's a budget, everyone is allocated a certain budget in the company. And so every year they can expect to at least attend maybe 3 or more trainings, whether it's in-house in the company or even outsourced outside, meeting other companies, meeting other people. So I think it certainly helps, because sometimes one of the deterrents for people to look to develop themselves is the cost. You know, because not everyone has money to invest, and time is another factor. But of course, if the cost was covered, you know, it sort of makes it easier, or even gets you thinking, what else can I do on my own instead of just what this company is giving me, because I want to reach this goal faster. But now I see that I have a goal. I've taken all these things. What can it do for me? Is there a path I'm taking, or am I just taking training because the company told me to do so? So it certainly helps, as I said, even with appraisals and such in a company. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that matter. So yeah, so it certainly helps. So Aliu, I echo what you were saying. You know what you were saying, and same with Luis and Pierre, because even if the company has everything at your disposal and you don't really have a clue or even want to take part, then you cannot blame anyone, because the company is doing what it can within its budget and within its framework. So then it falls on your shoulders. So you can take the horse to the river, but you cannot force it to drink. So at the end of the day, the company is taking you to the river, but you have to decide: do you want to drink this? And if you don't know, ask. Who can help you? And that's another thing Pierre was saying. You need these coaches and different techniques companies can use. Just like he said, the cross training. I've seen other companies do it. Even secondments. There are just so many different types of ways of which you can, what they call job swaps as well, similar to cross training. You swap roles. I see in the oil and gas is pretty common there. Just because if you have someone missing for any reason, and someone else has taken up some of their tasks, they can come in and fill, not everything, because there are some, cases where you have very confidential, clients that you're working with. So if you're absent, nobody's going to touch those clients, or information. But, just some of your daily routine or transactions can be handled by someone else. So it does help sometimes if, employees at least understand what each, another person is doing, just so you're not, put at risk of performing if the person is absent. So yeah, so I certainly like those types of strategies. They're pretty useful. I think Luis wants to add as well, and it's getting close to the hour. So I'll go ahead and ask this question before Luis. Luis, normally at the hour mark, if anyone's busy, they're allowed to drop out, and then we continue for 30 minutes, and then we end it. So if you're busy at the hour mark, I'll let you exit. If you can continue, we continue for an extra 30 minutes and we close it out. Because I don't want to, take anybody's extra minutes. It's a Saturday. People have, things to do. So definitely we have 37 minutes to go. But in 7 minutes time, if anybody needs to drop out, just let me know. We'll let you do your closing. So thank you. I'll open the floor to you, Luis.
Yeah, just quick addition here to what you guys. I mean, obviously a wealth of knowledge here being displayed for everybody. And just wanted to add a few things. Sometimes the job that you're working for is not the one for you. Does that make sense? Sometimes the position that you're working on is not the one that's right for you. So it's up to the person that's working the job to figure out what it is that they want to get out of it, right? Like you mentioned, there's jobs that have performance reviews. We have performance reviews. Our field training officers, police officers have FTOs that work with them from the moment they get out of recruitment training into the field. And all these assesses like their strengths, their weaknesses, and what they need to work on. Most companies have that. Some companies don't. And for the companies that you want to grow in that don't have this, maybe it's in your best interest to look for something that has that, or help develop that. That makes you an asset. So that's the other thing. Like if you want to grow in a company and if you want to develop as an employee, there's certain functions that you can actually help implement. So that makes you valuable to the company because you're bringing these things to management, you're bringing these things to the environment. Small businesses, for example, they don't have a lot of funding for that type of stuff. So obviously this would be advantageous to them. Keep in mind, they can't send everybody to school. They can't send everybody to a class. They might have 50 employees and only can send 2. Well, those 2 would be expected to cross-train. And the biggest thing I've had in dealing with the high turnover rate, right, is that people don't like to ask questions. Why? Because they don't like to fail. Like Pierre said, we all fail. Like, we learn from my failures. We learn from my experiences. We learn from my failures. But you don't learn from your wins. You learn from your losses, right? You play in soccer, you lose that game. You know, next time you play, you know where your defense needs to be. You know where your strikers need to be, right? Just to put it in a context where I know everybody plays soccer here. So, I'm sorry, football. Let's drop that soccer thing off. But that's the thing. That's the advantage. Like, once you learn to ask questions and find out what you don't know, then you can make a measuring stick and say, okay, well, I want to be at point A. Right now I'm at point C. But if you're not real with yourself to realize, okay, well, these are the strengths I need to work on, then it makes it even harder for somebody else to assess them for you. You can't let somebody else assess your strengths. You know your strengths. It's up to you to display them in a possible way that's actually advantageous to you and the company, right? But keep in mind, I mean, in a lot of big companies, you're just a number, right? You're a number in a big. Go work for Google. See if the CEO knows your name. Like, it's a huge company, right? And unless you're working a major project, they're not going to know exactly what your first or last name is, much less, right? They just know you as an email address, an employee number. That's what you are. So you have to make your mark. If you want to be successful, if you want to pound the door and have management look at you to be considered for other positions, you have to keep pounding that door saying, hey, look what I've done. Hey, look what and document. That's one of the biggest things. Ask questions and document. If you don't document, then you can't go back and say, hey, list A, Y, Z, B, this is what I've done, right? Because they're like, well, you know, people have short-term memories in this industry. It's IT. I mean, yeah, everything works in ones and zeros, but they have very short-term memories. So it's in your best interest always to expand yourself the most you can, whenever you can. The other thing, as far as building, develop a plan. Like, try to figure out what it is that you want to be in, right? You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. So you have to ask questions. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. Like Pierre said earlier, you can't be in a comfort zone all the time. Why? Because you won't grow. If you're not challenged, if you're not put in a position where you're not comfortable, you won't put your biggest foot forward to be able to expand and grow in that position. So just a few things. I didn't want to take everybody's time on it, but just a few things I wanted to add. I think you guys have done a great job at hitting all the points. Sitting here, I think I ran out of paper jotting down some points, but that's all I got for now.
Thank you, Luiz. Appreciate the nuggets. Well, it's at the hour mark, so Luiz, are you okay going for another 30 minutes? And Pierre, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, great. So once that's out the way, review some comments. I'll review just a couple things. Vivek commented, I myself used and continue to use pathways to certify and educate and broaden my knowledge, only to help not myself, but the organization. Says, you're right, Davis. It set the tone. One definitely needs that ecosystem and support system. Then he goes on to say, Boubacar, I don't think Boubacar mentioned anything, Vivek, but says, Boubacar, some of your touch points hit home for me. Organizational culture drives success. And he says, setting great point on framework, there has to be an employee-backed framework, agile. And then he mentions job rotation. It has a security connotation too, but more so for employee and organizational benefit. And then Mange comments, key point to note too is alignment. Your vision for the employee should be in line with their own personal career goals. And we'll touch on that, I think, next. Then Vivek goes on to say, great point, having someone doing a job role just because won't work eventually, it will be a weak breaking formula. The good old Army Green Book from Skillcraft. Okay, so I think, thank you for your comments, Vivek. Made some great comments. Menge's comment, however, raises, you know, a question, right? You know, should the, you know, employee, you know, the employee's career goals be considered by the company when designing or, you know, preparing solutions or learning solutions or pathways? Is this? Let's just hit on that. What are your thoughts on this?
I can jump in, if that's okay. I think it's valid. I think that as an employee, whatever your career aspirations are, whatever your goals are, definitely needs to be aligned with you know, some of the objectives either from your job function or the department that you work in, or let's say even the organization as a whole, because there always has to be a tick and tie. There's a reason why you were hired into that role. When that job requisition was put out, it was put out for a reason. It was not just blindly put out, right? It was put out because the organization either realized, oh, we have a skill gap here, or we need more bodies to fill this role because of XYZ opportunity, right? Or we want to go into XYZ channel. So there's a tick and tie between the role that you play and, you know, and that of the objectives of the company. And I think that's where I think Manga is spot on with making sure that there's that alignment, because you have to be able to see how what you do impacts the organization, right? And the benefit that they get from what you also produce. So I think that's I think that's spot on. But I think when I think of it from the manager standpoint, right, or the person who you're reporting into, in terms of how you begin to develop, you know, an employee's needs, you know, it's a lot of people roll the dice on this, right? It's an elusive task. People roll the dice on this, and you know, my guidance and caution has always been, you know, managers have to pay very close attention, right? In terms of the development of the employee. They need to take into account their performance, of course, right? How they're going about their day to day, but also the potential, right? And you know, there's several questions, you know, managers can be asking, right? You know, does the employee meet or exceed, you know, expectations, right, in at least one or more performance areas, just as an example, right? You know, are they a key contributor to the team or the organization? You know, how do they perceive or receive corrective feedback? And I want to touch on feedback for 1 second, because this is where a lot of people struggle. A lot of us in the corporate world, or you know, even when we work for private companies, I think a lot of people wear the emotions in their sleeves, right? And that's fine, because everybody's different. But I think one thing that I've come to find out, you know, people don't read between the tea leaves when they get feedback. As soon as they hear the negative, they're like, oh man, this person doesn't respect what I'm doing. They don't see the value, you know. But I think, and that's why it's not good to react when you get feedback. You have to take time to process it, to be able to read through the leaves, and then be able to say, okay, what is it that this person is giving me in terms of feedback? Is it constructive, right? And did they offer and provide some actionable next steps? And I think that's another thing. And that's what separates good managers from great managers, right? There has to be constructive feedback, and there has to be some points of how do I get there, right? And it's hard to have a heart-to-heart, you know, conversation with someone when the feedback is not great. But how do you leverage that to be able to, you know, improve, right? Because that's what really separates, you know, I would say the good from the great, right? You know, another thing could be just, you know, just if the employee has received any performance rewards. The thing is this, at the end of the day, we all get rewarded for the work that we put in, right? That's the equity that we get in return. So being recognized is also a huge part. So as your managers should be advocating, especially when you do a good job, right? Sometimes it's monetary, of course. Sometimes it's a nice email. Sometimes it's a small speech, whatever, right? But I think, you know, these are things that managers need to be paying close attention to the people that report onto them, to make sure that their wants and their aspirations are well thought out and also are aligned to that of the company's or job functions objectives, right? And then make sure you enact on continuous feedback, right? Because feedback in the past, just as an example, back in the day, people used to, you know, you would see employees go through the whole year and they'll perform, you know, good and bad in some cases, right? But then they'll get feedback at the end. So when you get feedback at the end of the performance year, it doesn't do you any good. Why? Because you've let the whole year go by, right? And you've done some great things, you've done some bad things, and you didn't have time to course correct. So there's this whole, we call it a 360 loop, right? There's this whole continuous feedback thing that we like to coin here at Accenture, where we provide timely feedback. It's very important because if let's say let's say your fiscal year, I'm just going to use an example. Let's say your fiscal year starts in January, right? And between January and April, you work on a project and you didn't do so well. For example, your performance year ends in December. You have March, April, May, June to course correct and improve on it. But that's the timely feedback. So how you receive the feedback, right? What you do with the feedback and the next steps that you take is what really defines how you move forward, right? So just wanted to kind of, you know, touch on those things.
Thank you, Pierre. Appreciate that. And super, super, super relevant. Yeah. Oh, okay, Luis, I think you want to share something. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may add to that, absolutely, the performance reviews with the employees definitely do make a difference. It's equally as important for managers as well to learn their employees, right? You know who your go-to person is when you want stuff completed, done, or done in an emergency. You know how everybody that works for you as a manager, you know how they function. So you're supposed to, or at least have an idea. And obviously, you're not going to go to the slowest guy to have him do your numbers, right? Because especially if you need it in a crunch, and you know their weaknesses and strengths. It's like it's like a team, right? Whatever sport team, you know who your go-getters are, you know who your defensive people are, you know who your horse, hardworking, hard-nosed people are. So it's up to you to know their strengths and weaknesses and help build some of these. Obviously, it helps if the employee is willing to correct course on some of these malfunctioned or miscoursed directions. But yeah, like you said, we normally had quarterly reviews, right? Every so months you get a review and they tell you, hey, okay, well, this is what all you've done great, this is all you've done bad. And like you said, it's a manager's job, and depending on the company or the business that you're working at, it's up to them to devise some sort of plan for you to course correct or maybe even improve on some of these. We start off with, hey, what are your goals, right? What do you think you should work on? And it's good to have that communication of open line communication, because a lot of times, like you said, when feedback's bad, and a lot of us in this industry, we do wear our emotions in our sleeves. When somebody tells you, hey, your code's not good. Well, what do you mean my code's not good? No. It's you get defensive automatically, and you lock yourself up from being able to receive any positive feedback, right? So automatically you're blocking that communication door of a two-way street, right? If they're giving you feedback, from my point of view, right, I'd rather get feedback, whether it's good or bad. That means that somebody is actually paying attention to what I'm doing, and they're either commending me for it, or they're telling me, hey, maybe you should do this. Obviously, delivery is essential, right? The way you deliver this to the employee in order to coax him into working correctly, or if you deliver it harshly, obviously you're going to get some type of rift. That person's going to be disgruntled, and essentially your employees are your biggest asset in an environment where you're depending on people to work for you, especially if you're in a managerial position. The way you treat the people that work for you is how successful your team's going to be. It could be something as simple as pizza day on a Friday. I mean, just get the morale up and then get everybody up. And hey, right after that pizza day, you can kind of have a little quick one-on-one or quick group meeting, like, hey, this is the plan for next week. We need to do this and this and this and that and that. And then you kind of get them pumped up. It's up to you to build them up as a manager or somebody in a managerial position on that job. But obviously, it's equally as important for the person that's working there to want to get some sort of two-way communication with you're not a child waiting for candy all the time, right? You obviously have to show some sort of self-driven, self-awareness. You can, start projects by yourself, without supervision and everything else. But at the same time, you should be able to work with others. And the biggest thing is asking questions. For me, my biggest thing has always been asking questions. If I don't know something, I will always ask a question. Whether it's, obviously you don't want to ask stuff that you supposed to know or something that they've told you before. This is why you ask questions, you make notes, and you make your own notes. And yeah, sometimes you forget, but you ask questions again. But that's how you learn. You learn by asking questions and making mistakes. You don't learn by assuming. You don't learn by thinking, because when you start assuming stuff, you start making the wrong assumptions all the time. You start perceiving things the wrong way. So it could be something as, hey, can you explain to me again, how is it that you want me to do X, Y, and Z? It's something as simple as that can help course correct your success from taking a nosedive just the instant that you took, the instruction that you were given. So just asking questions, helping build the plan. Delivery obviously is a big thing. I've gone through a few bad managers to appreciate the good ones. So, I mean, all this is a learning experience, but it's all for the person that's trying to develop their career. And I think part of the information delivered here is to be able to build employees, not just employees, businesses, as well as, not everybody is going to be the worker bee. Some people will be managers, and these are things to consider moving forward as you expand in your career.
Thanks for sharing, Luiz. I've got some comments, and I think, okay, let's see. So we got Vivek says the DoD or Army is no short on speeches, full of information. A lot of parallels against the corporate world. We get emails with useful training information too. And then Manga says, delivery, ding, ding, ding. It's all in the delivery when it comes to feedback. And then Vivek says, also workshops from senior folks, or anyone really, with all the digital collaborative platforms, workshop on any topic that help. So, right, we have 16 minutes to go. Okay, so we're going to be very conscious of time. I want to just ask from your experience. So let's say I have a small startup and I want to, develop a good, maybe employee development program. What are some of the, things that I can do as a startup?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think it depends on what type of company that you're starting, and what are some of the roles and job functions that are important to your business, right? Some startups could be lucky to have an HR function, some don't. Sometimes these roles within startups just they get organically created. And a lot of times what happens with startups is, to be very, very frank, at least from the ones that I've, been close to, as harsh as it sounds, it seems like I should say employee development is not top of mind. And I'll tell you why. When you are starting a company and you're thinking, let's say you're a product company, you're trying to push a product to market, you're thinking of your customers. You're thinking, how do I get market share? Those are the things that are top of your mind. How do I get funding, right? So, and what startups tend to do, which is, I would say, slightly different from traditional companies who have been more established, when they hire, they tend to hire people who are very seasoned in a particular position because time is money for them, right? Like they're building a product, they're trying to get a feature across, they're gonna get top of the line software developers. They're not gonna get junior developers per se right off the bat. Now, not to say that they wouldn't hire more people who could be junior, but they're very strategic in how they go about, looking at their job tree, right, and their job function. So I think it just depends on the company. It depends on what their priorities are, how big the company is, where in the stage of their startup they're in. Like I said, the early ones, they're not thinking junior. They're thinking, I need someone who's going to help me go to market faster, who's going to help me accelerate my growth, and I need the cream of the crop. Now, once you get to a certain stage where you feel like, okay, market share looks good, we're growing at a certain pace, we got some really seasoned employees. Now, what do we need in order to support them? Because they can't do all the work, for the rest of the time. So that's when you begin to look into junior resources and things like that. But then you also have to figure out, well, what's your plan to be able to have something in place to make sure that those junior resources, grow and can meet, your objectives and goals as a company. So I think it depends. Again, some over time would have an HR function that will be dedicated to kind of building out, of course, in partnership with the rest of the organization, to be able to build what would be, your career development framework, right? But at least from my opinion and what I've seen in small startups, yeah, that's kind of how I would articulate it.
Thank you, Pierre. Luis, you got anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add a few points to what Pierre said. Obviously, the vision of the company definitely does help. What you hope to achieve, which I think a lot of it just depends on the goals, and the size of the company also helps. I mean, most startups are relatively small in number, and like you said, you typically have your one-man shows, workhorses dedicated to starting everything, doing everything, minimal number of people handling a lot of functions, right? The other thing that I think a lot of them focus on that help is like-minded people, like people that have the same common goal, that have thought this idea and want to see it to fruition. So a lot of them are equally invested in its success from the get-go. So you're not going to get a lot of incomers that you have to train or have to sell the idea or the product to in order to get the startup going. And just a lot of it just has to deal with how you can develop the people you start to acquire, right? And like you mentioned, once you get to a certain threshold, once you get to a certain point, then you'll have the ability to dedicate resources to developing your people in the junior, mid-level, entry-level section that would start your work from the ground up. But yeah, typically, as you mentioned, most startups go with the hard nose, one-man shows, sit in the basement, no lights, 15 screens doing God knows what at how many hours in the morning without looking for compensation at that point, because you all are just so dedicated to this vision and getting it off the ground. So it's a bit different for startups in that sense.
But I also think, I think also, regardless of where you find yourself, right, whether you're at a startup, and you happen to be, a resource and you report to someone, I think back to what we were saying earlier, where you have to own your plan. But I think there's another factor that kind of plays into this, and which is trust, which is how do you build trust between yourself and whoever you report to. And as we've seen over the years, the reason why people leave companies is because of who they report to, right? They don't see that vested interest in the person who they're reporting to. So it's very, very important for leaders, managers, people who have direct reports, to make sure that they can build that trust between themselves and their employee. But I think owning that development plan by the employee themselves, I think, and then kind of what Luis was saying, just as much as the manager or whoever you're reporting to is responsible for your development, you have to also find ways to so to speak, challenge them in a good way. And kind of what Luis was saying in terms of asking questions. You can't just, say, oh, I just want to, I want to learn Python. That's not just going to be enough, right? So you have to be able to clearly articulate why you want to do it, right? Where do you see that going? How does that impact, what it is that you're doing or the organization? There has to be some substance. And if, let's say, your manager comes back and says something contrary to what you were thinking, you should be able to ask the question. If they say, well, we don't have Python or, training, or we can't offer that right now, you should be able to ask the question, well, why? So I think being able to ask the right questions, and when I say push back in the right way, to get them to be accountable for your development and your career, right? Because I'll tell you what, being a true people manager is a hard job on top of your day-to-day. So we just actually finished that, actually it is ongoing, but it starts at the beginning of August all the way through the end of August. I've sat in so many meetings, I get tired, because it's not just, oh, who needs to get promoted, who's shown exceptional achievement and stuff like that, right? We also have to worry about the people who are not developing. What is the plan? Like, you can't just leave them there. You have to be able to build them up and figure out, well, how do we upskill? How do we reskill? Maybe it's not a fit in this function. Maybe it's a fit in another function. So there's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of documentation, and you can't just come to the table and just say, oh yeah, this person did a great job this year. It's not going to cut it. We have an obligation to the people that report into us to really get down to the nuts and bolts as to their career trajectory, their plan, what it is that they accomplish, and be able to recognize as well. And I think a lot of people don't do that enough. You have to be able to recognize what it is that your employees or your direct reports are doing along the way, because at the end of the day, that's all part of the self-fulfillment part of the journey. Because if I know I'm doing good, but I hear someone else tells me I'm doing good and I see it, it's a feel-good moment, right? So it's a hard job to manage people. It's a very tough job. A lot of people, love to have direct reports and love to have people report into them. But it's a very tough job, because the responsibility of that person is very paramount, right? Because they owe it to the people that report into them to see to it that their journey is just as successful. So I think that that bi-directional relationship between the employee and whoever they report into, I think is crucial. And like I said, you have to own it. You have to be able to vocalize what it is that you're looking to do, and then be able to measure it as you go along. And if for whatever reason, those things are not getting met, then you can make the assumption, the assessment whether, maybe it's the manager. Maybe I need to switch managers, right? Maybe I need to look for a different role, right? Or maybe it's time to leave the company. That's okay too.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Luiz. Very, very good additions. We have a comment from Mukhtar. It says, I'm currently documenting the processes and systems in my business. This will help me to come up with a manual for new staff and speed up the induction periods. However, it's tedious and time consuming. Then Vivek points out people, processes, and technology. And again, metrics, you're spot on, Pierre. So I want to touch on Mokhtar.
Hello, Serin. I just wanted to have a quick point, very quickly on the startups and for Pierre and Luiz. I think those were the great points. I completely agree, right? And just wanted to, if you're a startup, you don't know whether you even have a viable, a viable business, right? So why do you want to be spending resources developing things that you don't know? It's what is important is really you having those immediate goals. You have targets to know whether there's something here. It's about getting there first and then investing out, as Pierre said, and building all of that out. So, for example, if you are a startup and you are thinking, well, I want to do this, maybe you are not spending, your priorities are not too clear, and you're not spending time where you need to be. It's the whole concept of this minimum viable product. Before you spend money and develop, you need to first have a minimum product and then test whether that is really viable before you put more resources into that. And I feel some of those things are the same. What is more important is getting the job descriptions right, getting the people that you need who you know are going to deliver for a fact. So experienced people who you know are going to deliver and getting them motivated. And then eventually you build those things out. So I just wanted to outline that. Really, I think those are great points. I don't know whether you have all these startups listening, but I think those are some very great points that you really need to take in now. Thanks.
Thank you, Aliu. Yeah, so just wanted to ask 2 questions, and we'll close with these 2. So because we have 3 more minutes, hope we can squeeze it in. So Mokhtar mentioned that he is documenting processes and systems to help his induction process, which I think it's a good, it's relevant, and it's a good good process, depending, because I think in his case he's pretty much developed his MVP and he's operating. He knows what he's doing, and I think for some startups, of course, the induction process is probably one of the only points where you really need to worry about trying to get someone, because someone competent enough to do their role. So, so it's a good thing, Mokhtar, that you're doing, because definitely, the induction process is part of employee development, and it is very important. I mean, if you look at the chart, a graph between, employee expectations and company expectations, you see that employees' expectations go down based on their induction. If you receive the very poor induction into a company, let's say you join the company, nobody told you where to go, nobody told you how to do anything, they just left you by yourself, chances are when you came in, you were probably excited because of the title of the position, but then you probably start doubting that this is the place you want to be. So inductions are very important, because if you have a very good induction for your employees, then chances are their expectations will stay positive and grow, rather than dip and then normalize later, right? Because of course you can do certain things that can get their expectations back on track. So as a startup, of course, there are things that you can do to develop employees, even if you don't have the budget. One thing I've seen in the Gambian ecosystem with their startups is a lot of them, are challenged with financial issues, right? So they need finances to hire people. So they cannot hire very qualified people to help them with some of their more technical roles. So what they end up doing, they hire interns. So if you hire an intern, now how do you design a program to help this intern kind of develop into at least a functional member of your company, or even competent enough to take care, maybe not of the technical task, but at least they could do some transactional tasks that can get you some return on the investment that you're paying, because even interns are not free. You know, you have to at least help them with their transportation or some type of allowance that you can pay them. So, you know, as a startup, these are things I think that startups think about. You know, how do we, you know, create a program that can help us at least complete some of our functions? You know, what are some of the strategies that we can leverage to help us at least, you know, get competent people, you know, to be able to continue performing. But I think it's time. So I think what we'll do.
Sering, just to touch on that, I think it's also important that as a startup, you need to assess where your strengths are as well, because you can leverage help. You can leverage help from people who have either done it a million times before, and what that does, it helps to accelerate you know, your growth plans as well, right? So if you are a startup, I'm just using this as an example, and you are the leader of the company, but you are the one that's kind of running across different areas within the organization to kind of jumpstart all those different areas, you should be able to figure out, well, is this an area that I want to spend time in? And is that important to me? Or can I bring someone in who has experience, who has done this before in other capacities, to be able to help jumpstart, you know, what it is that I'm trying to do? And then from there, you can say, okay, well, how do I, you know, build from that experience, right? So you can basically shorten, you know, or reduce the time, you know, to market by having outside help to be able to help jumpstart, you know, certain things that you wanna get going. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you, Pierre. I think, oh, Luiz, you want to add something? Go ahead, and then we'll go ahead and do our closing.
No, just a few things. Just
Yeah,
obviously,
sure.
just to add to what Pierre said. Obviously, when you do decide to engage in a startup event, you want to trust the people that you get to work with you, right? If you're not trusting the people that you're hiring to work with you, then that person that has the main vision gets involved every which way in every single aspect of it, and then you don't purely focus on getting the business off the ground as intended, because you're spending a lot more time with other different various departments, whereas your main focus should be, you know, getting your product to market, getting your service to market. I think a lot of SOPs also help, having clearly defined SOPs of modes of operation, of how you do certain functions and how you do certain jobs, clearly defined, easily defined for the people, also helps. Processes and policies in place that could propel these people into the right function is very key. Like you mentioned, you know, somebody starts a job, doesn't know where to go get their accessories from. Something as simple as that does leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth when they first get hired, because now you're, like you said, your perception of the company that you're working for goes just from like, you know, straight down. So all that definitely helps, you know, just having all of these things in place, because, you know, starting everybody's vision when you start a business, you want to make it, right? But you can't make it if you're stretched 15 ways, right? And all your effort and energy is not put into the one main focus, which is what your vision was for. And then the people, again, it goes back to having people that are like-minded to join with you in this endeavor, because that helps propel everybody has that one goal. It's like getting in a boat. If everybody's rowing in the same direction, you will move. But if you got two people rolling backwards, one punching holes in the boat, you know, you go nowhere. So that's kind of the vision or the approach that needs to be taken in that endeavor. So again, policies, procedures, SOPs in place. You know, just having stuff that's clearly defined so people can have a base to work off. I think makes a hell of a difference.
Thank you, Luiz. Thank you, Pierre. Man, I wish we had more time, but we're gonna go ahead and start the closing. I'm gonna review the last comments, and we will let Luiz close, and then Pierre, since Pierre was starting all the time. So I think he's going to feel bad if I make him start everything. So we'll add some mixture to it. So we'll have Luiz close first, and then Pierre, and then we'll do our thank yous to everyone after that, and we close. So the few comments that came in, Vivek said, metrics, you're spot on, Pierre. Luiz, great point on vision with startup. How long is the visionary goal? 5 years out or 10 years? Are very different stories. MVP, like Mokhtar said. Looking forward to touching base with you all outside of here. Thanks to Sirin for hosting. Then he goes on, this is exactly what the Army Future Software Engineering Factory is doing. VMware experts coaching soldiers to develop in an agile manner. And then Aliyu adds, thanks for a great session, really insightful. Thank you all for all your beautiful comments. We're gonna go ahead and go to closing. So Luiz, the floor is yours.
Well, first off, appreciate everybody's time for joining, Pierre, Sirin, and all the participants. It's definitely insightful. Looking forward to the next couple of series of these. This is really, really great conversation and dialogue need to be had. Again, going back to just touching base on some of the other things that we've talked about, you know, as far as when you develop an employee, strengths and goals, obviously, for the person is definitely something to consider. And in that, again, you know, everybody needs to know their role. And sometimes, like Pierre mentioned earlier, maybe the job is not the right one for you. And that's something that you should be able to make that determination in order not to fail. Because what happens, you become complacent, you remain in that job 5, 7, 8 years. By the time you know it, it's almost retirement time and you haven't advanced. There's nothing worse than talent going to waste. You know, you start seeing the fresh faces come in, you know, full of energy, full of everything, and they get shut down every time. Well, sometimes these faces don't kind of try to devise their own way, again, in asking questions. And like you said, you don't push back in the wrong way. There's a tactful way to push back, not even push back, I would say gain feedback or gain dialogue with these people. Same thing in an interview. You go for an interview, they interview you, they ask you all kinds of questions. Well, it's up to you in that interview as well to ask them questions. And I think a lot of people don't realize when you're in an interview that you are entitled to ask questions and have, you know, them ask you questions again, because you're not only are they interviewing you, you're also interviewing that company. So you're initially put in a position of power, and people don't realize that. People have nerves because, you know, they're looking at me. I'm microscopes on me, but the microscope, it's actually a spotlight on everybody. So to see if you're a perfect fit for that place or not. And again, it all boils down to where you want to go and having a plan. Point A, you want to get from point A to point B. Well, the path has to be clearly defined in your mind, because nobody's going to make that walk essentially but you. And again, if you're an employee or startup business, it always helps to write things down and devise some sort of plan and process. And you know, as you go making that path, you check out some of these things, and then you can look back at that piece of paper, say, hey, look, I've accomplished A, B, C, C1, C1, 4, you know, and then you can see your journey as it progresses, and then you can kind of feel good about it as you proceed with that. But everything starts with a plan. Writing it down, for me personally, writing it down helps. I think I filled the heck out of my notebook on my phone because I use that heavily, like even like grocery list, right? ABC. But that's the same thing in life. You know, you want to do something, you want to accomplish something, you write it down and you knock it out. And as you knock it out, you write those, you check them out. But again, don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. Definitely appreciate your feedback, your dialogue. Look forward to many of these series. Sharing, this is amazing, dude. Keep doing what you're doing, and look forward to, you know, being able to maybe one day be able to do this in person if we could. So, but thanks.
Certainly. Thank you, Luiz. Appreciate that. Pierre?
Yeah, just want to say thanks to the guests and the audience. I think their participation and engagement was great. So thank you to them taking time. And of course, thanks to you, sharing, for yet another great series. And of course, thanks to Luiz for some of the insightful nuggets of information that you've shared. I think we all learned a lot today. I think just in parting, as an employee, you have to own your career. Make that your prime objective. Like, own your career, define your path, understand what your aspirations are, where you're trying to go, where you're trying to be, and make sure you challenge the heck out of whoever you report to make sure you get there. It's very important, right? Because at the end of the day, when you look back, you would have worked 15, 20, 25 years. You want to be able to have a story. And that story does not get built overnight, right? So it takes time. And the more you are able to, endure through the journey, like Luiz was saying, you're planning it out and making sure that you're hitting these milestones. You can look back and say you have a heck of a story, but also where that story plays plays a factor into is as you're moving up the chain, right? Depending on whether you're starting a business or you're moving up the corporate ladder. The same way you are building your story, you have to also understand that there are 1,000 other people building the same story. So it's very competitive, right? So the more you can have, the best story to put on the table, the better it is for you as well as an individual. So just make sure you keep that in mind. I think it'll be good. And don't be afraid to seek help and get people to give you advice and guide you along the way as well.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Luiz. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Just echoing onto what Pierre and Luiz have given, very, very key points. Very key points to note. I just want to add that as there might be entrepreneurs watching this, or business owners, so even for business owners, the same thing. What do you want? Where do you want your business to go? And how do you get people to get you there? How do you help them? Because at the end of the day, if you develop the employees, or if you help in that process, they can, be more aligned and perform better to get you. So from the whole conversation, we spoke about appraisals, we spoke about checks and balances, timely feedback, the employees, taking charge of their career. All of these things help out a lot. So how do you build that environment? So as a business owner, make sure you have that environment where an employee can feel safe going to a senior or their line manager. Just go to the line manager and say, hey, I want to be where you are, or I want to be the vice president, or I want to be this position or that position. So make sure, you create that environment that will let someone be able to take charge. And as Luiz was saying, also being able to be diplomatic about it as well. And when you want something, given to you, you have to build a business case. So if you're an employee for a company, you have to know how to present a business case. Even in a lot of companies now, what ends up happening is, as learning and development professionals, L&D has separated itself from HR. L&D now is its own unit. So, but it collaborates with HR, it collaborates with operations to see, okay, what are the areas the company needs help with? How do we build a case for what employees want? But the conversation goes nowhere if the employees don't have a say in it. So the employees have to take a key role, as Pierre was saying. If they have to take a key role in being part of those conversations. Okay, the line manager says these are the things that he recommends that we do, but for us, we want to do A, B, and C. Can these be added? Can we do this? How is this going to help the company, as Pierre was mentioning? So showing the business case, what is the return the business is going to get from investing in your career, is also very important, because business is all about ROI. So if they see that if they invest in you and they're going to get so much return, I don't think that's going to be any question about that. You more than likely get your way. But if they have questions and they like, I don't really know if I should invest this much in creating these programs, then you have to be able to build that case to show them, no, wait, I forgot, I didn't show you the budget, I didn't show you the return that you can get. Let's put these in numbers, because even in learning programs, some of the challenges that they get is, how do they demonstrate the impact, right? How do you demonstrate, okay, this employee went through this remedial thing, but their performance has not improved. So how is that? How did this help? Did we just throw money down the drain or not? So a lot of programs now finding ways, in their evaluation and reporting to sort of tie in, any type of program they invest in to money, right? To monetary figures. I know, even though ROE is important as well, but like I said. So thank you all for your input, and thanks for listening, being patient. I know, always a few minutes over. So hopefully you still have a little bit of your Saturday left to go and enjoy yourself. Don't get too wild. So we'll see you again next week. We have another interesting session about business registration. So if you're trying to register a business in Gambia, I'm going to have the registrar or assistant registrar of companies with me. So we'll be talking about what are the things that you would need, if you wanted to register, what would be the implications to your business, and also what would be some of the benefits. Okay, so on that note, I thank you all. Vivek, thank you.
I want to say thank you to all three of you and everybody else on here. And you can tell by my long chat log, literally everything, all the points that you guys are making, both Luiz and Pierre and Sarine and all the other participants too, that it has resonated with me in every sense of the word. I mean, so straight up with my experience. And I bring that military side of the experience, but I can also see that corporate line up. I was like, wow, this is interesting. One of the best talks. And I look forward to more next week.
Thank you, Vivek. Thanks. It's been a pleasure having all of you. Enjoy your Saturday.
See you next week. Yep.
All right.
And au revoir. Thank you. See you all later.
All right.
7-Eleven.
Hasta luego. Luis.
Nos vemos. Adiós.
Adiós.